with Nelson Jordan. I'm Chris Nelson. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page, follow us on all of our social media pages, and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. We are going to be discussing the Pittsburgh Steelers defeating the Minnesota Vikings 24-21 at Croke Park in Dublin, Ireland. The NFL's first game played in Dublin, following suit of what the college game has done. The Pittsburgh Steelers did play a preseason game in Dublin 28 years ago in 1997, but this is the first real football regular season game on the NFL side of things that has been played in Dublin. Of course, their owner was the ambassador to Dublin for 4 years, going back, I believe, 13 years ago. He finished his tenure now, so this has been a long time coming, and a great atmosphere. And Nelson, what were your takeaways from the game itself?
I thought NFL Network, I thought they had a beautiful intro, just to touch just a little bit on the aesthetic. How, this was a great venue for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If nobody knew, I believe it was in the late 90s where they actually had a preseason game there, and there's been a lot of Steeler fandom since then, as you stated. And the crowd was phenomenal, but the game itself, as I'm going to go quick on, this was just a Pittsburgh bashing the whole game. I thought Minnesota was very lackluster. They had a great, fantastic pass offense. I thought Justin Jefferson looked great. I thought Jordan Addison looked great, but Jordan Addison did not play enough, just because he finally came after his suspension. But still, both of them racked over 200 yards total offense. Not a touchdown, but where all the scoring did come from the majority of the game was Pittsburgh. We saw Kenneth Gainwell fit in very nicely, filling in for Jaylen Warren, who subsequently was crossed off. An hour and a half before kickoff because of a sickness. Yep. And Kenneth Gainwell went 19 for 99, 2 touchdowns. He had 2 nice goal line rushes into the end zone, but got to give a lot of credit to that offensive line and that push that they had against that Minnesota Vikings defense. And I got to give credit too as well for keeping Aaron Rodgers upright the majority of the game, because they were going to face a very ferocious defense, and they did that. I mean, yes, there were some sacks that, and there were some pressures that they wasn't able to get by, but Aaron Rodgers had a very efficient game as a result. 18 for 22, 200 yards, and 1 touchdown. I thought DK Metcalf shined in this game as well. He was definitely winning his one-on-one matchups. He had a nice touchdown grab. I think it was a 60-yard pass. And then Minnesota, they only made a game out of it, essentially, at the end of the game. They scored quickly on a touchdown. They got the ball back, and they stopped the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got the ball back, but then ultimately Carson Wentz, he just choked again. And we saw Carson Wentz, he just had his moments in this game again where it made you think like, oh boy, we had Carson Wentz of good last game, but we had Carson Wentz of like, my God, what are you thinking again, man? So, like I said, this was just another way of saying, Carson Wentz, do your job, keep the shit upright until, your young quarterback McCarthy can come back and you guys can somehow survive, tread water. What's your take?
Yeah, you referenced that before I dive into my own thoughts. You referenced that Jaylen Warren was out for the Steelers. Kenneth Gainwell started at running back. We saw a lot more of the rookie running back out of Iowa, Caleb Johnson as well. That defense was also down a couple of starters, and Alex Highsmith at defensive end, as well as Joey Porter Jr. at cornerback. And on the Minnesota Vikings side of things, they were also without their starting running back, Aaron Jones. Trey Mason got the start in his place. Carson Wentz was starting in the place of the injured J.J. McCarthy, who was out. And on their defense, they were without their all-pro outside linebacker, Andrew Van Ginkel, as well as their oft-injured inside linebacker, Brian Cashman, who's proven throughout his career he simply cannot stay healthy. But still, big absences across the board, and we saw the impact that it certainly had on this game on both teams.
Yeah.
The Vikings' offensive line, they were without their rookie right guard. Their Pro Bowl starting right tackle, Brian O'Neill, goes out with injury in the first half, does not return. Their former perennial Pro Bowl center, Ryan Kelly, goes out with injury in the first half, does not return. And with those guys out, that right side of the offensive line just completely decimated by injury at that point in time. You've got 3 backups in at all 3 prominent positions on that side, and they could not handle the pressure. I mean, even without Alex Highsmith and without Joey Porter Jr. back in coverage, that Pittsburgh Steelers rush, T.J. Watt was all over them. Cam Hayward wasn't necessarily getting the pressure, but was having an impact. Herbig was big time. I mean, he was really getting after Carson Wentz, making plays in the backfield, and they just wreaked havoc. And for most of the game up until the end, the Vikings just, even at the very end, but a little bit when they had their rally, the Vikings just could not handle their pressure. I mean, they got after it. But you talked about Carson Wentz, and this is why you're the ultimate journeyman quarterback and are now starting for your sixth team in 6 years, which, by the way, he's the first quarterback to do that in 75 years.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go back to 1950 when the NFL had only been around for 30 years and teams regularly started multiple quarterbacks. The Rams in those days, in the early 50s, were starting 2 Hall of Famers, and Bob Waterfield and Norm Van Brocklin, each starting 6 games at quarterback that season in 51. One of those years they did that, but they were rotating them both years. Great teams, great offenses, great wide receivers. Either way, that is unbelievable to see, but his pocket presence is so poor. His awareness is so poor. His vision is so poor. His accuracy at times is pinpoint, and other times, especially when he's throwing the ball deep down the field, it is just way off. And it's maddening to watch. You're absolutely right. It's just infuriating. The interceptions were awful. At the end of the game when they had kind of a chance was just very poorly done by him. He just, again, his accuracy can be amazing at times, but too often he has no feel for the game. It's just he's not seeing the field. He's not feeling what's around him, and it's very frustrating to watch. The Steelers did get off to that good start, but one of the crazy plays in the game I want to reference because there was a funny moment to me that I don't know how many people will notice. I feel like somebody had to pick up on this. I was actually stunned they didn't mention the broadcast and that social media didn't get on it, but when Trey Mason had that fumble and Jalen Ramsey appeared to have a scoop and score, which, by the way, that was, I don't know if I've ever seen that, where Trey Mason touched the ball while he was out of bounds to prevent that from actually being a fumble and they retained possession. Great play by him, even though he didn't do it on purpose, but it worked out well. But did you notice as soon as they overturned that and ruled that he did indeed touch the ball out of bounds, so the Vikings kept the ball, the sun all of a sudden came out and started shining? The sun was literally shining down on the Minnesota Vikings. It was the last time it would for the game, but for that moment it did. That was funny to me. And you're right, Justin Jefferson and DK Metcalf were both unbelievable. These star wide receivers for their respective sides, and that was awesome to see, awesome to watch. DK Metcalf, I liked what the Steelers did. They clearly saw a match with the Vikings. They lined him up in the slot a lot, and he didn't necessarily have a lot of catches in there, but he did have a couple, including the 80-yard touchdown catch, which, by the way, look, this is going to be blasphemy. You're going to kill me for saying this. I apologize for even saying it, especially since they were playing against the Vikings. But the first thing I thought when I saw him just catch that and running past the whole defense and at his size was Randy Moss. I get it.
Yeah,
I know. I can't invoke Randy Moss. It's blasphemy, but he's so fast. He's so big and tall and fast. He just ran past the whole defense like they weren't even there. It was amazing. It was truly amazing. And they had control of the game, and it was interesting because when they kicked the field goal after they got the takeaway on the strip sack, I believe, and kicked the field goal and went up 24-6, it felt like the game was over. There wasn't that much time left. We were in the fourth quarter. But I think the Vikings holding them to the field goal there, even though that made it an 18-point game, 3-possession game, kind of kept them around a little bit. And they were able to answer and go down the field and finally get in the end zone. And they looked great on that drive. Some criticism has to be given to the Steelers. I know the defense was banged up, but, I mean, come on. You play great the whole game. You give that up. And then they got the 2-point conversion on top of it. And it got a little bit interesting. But then they have them backed up on their own 1-yard line and let the Vikings go 99 yards for a touchdown. That's inexcusable. And they blew the coverage on Jordan Addison. And a lot of time came off the clock, so it did work out for the Steelers in the end. But you can't blow that coverage. Somebody needs to be on Jordan Addison there. I mean, that's unacceptable. It's just inexcusable. And then I am not with Mike Tomlin at all that he chose to punt. It was 4th and short. You had a 3rd and 1. You gained inches, which I loved. That's the first time in a nationally televised game we got to see the virtual measurement. We've seen it in some of these Sunday afternoon games with Red Zone. But we finally got to see a nationally televised game, not prime time, our first Sunday morning game of the season, which we have a lot more to come. 6 in total. I believe each of the next 3 weeks we have one, and then a couple in November if we get a couple weeks off from them. But they specifically slated it as 9 inches to go. How awesome was that? I mean, for all these years, we've always seen 4th and inches, or they just call it 4th and 1 to simplify it, which is what they showed it as on the graphic. But we actually knew it was specifically a 4th and 9 inches. That was awesome. But he should have just gone for it. I mean, they had an essential tush push earlier with the funny meme now with Aaron Rodgers. They easily could have picked it up and the game would have been over. Minnesota was out of timeouts. Vikings had no timeouts left. and they would have won the game. Instead, they take a delay of game and then punt, and they punt it through the end zone for a touchback. There was no benefit to that whatsoever. They only gained 20 yards of field position, and with the way things went, it wouldn't have made a difference. Credit to the defense for getting the stop and on the fourth down, running the clock out and getting the win. Win's a win. You move on. It was another one of those typical Steelers wins, typical Vikings game as well, even though so often we see them lose those games. It was an entertaining game. It was certainly, I believe you referenced it up front, it was certainly sloppy at times. There was some frustration, but I didn't like that decision from Mike Tomlin, and it easily could have cost him the game. But good win for the Steelers, tough loss for the Vikings, and as they say, we move on. The Vikings will head over to London, playing Tottenham against the Browns next week. This time they'll be the home team, so look forward to watching and talking about that one. Tune back in with us for that one, guys, and for the rest of the Sunday slate, which we'll be talking about, so check us out for the next episode. But for right now, for Nelson Jordan, I'm Chris Nelson. This has been the First and Final Word.